There's no question in sales and marketing that we all spend the preponderance of our time thinking about us versus the competition. So, what makes us bigger, faster, smaller, stronger, whatever it might be, than the top two or three competitors that we're up against more often than not in an RFP, a tender process on a day to day basis. And that, of course, makes a ton of sense to figure out what really truly sets us apart from the competition. There is a bigger picture, however, that most of us tend to consider, at least at times, and that is what are alternate solutions to the same problem that may not in fact be a direct competitor? So what are other ways that a customer may go about solving that problem? Maybe if we're a technology company, maybe they could solve it not just with one of our alternate technological competitors, but maybe they could solve that problem through personnel or through outsourcing. So we think about alternate ways to solve the same problem. And we spend, I think, probably a decent amount of time thinking about those and competing against not just the competition, but competing against alternate ways to solve the same problem. There is a bigger picture, however, that we tend to sometimes overlook that turns out to critically matter in the world of large buying groups, not just large buying groups, but large diverse buying groups with lots of different perspectives coming from different functions and different geographies. Because in that world, it's not just that we're competing against the competition or that we're just competing with alternate solutions to the same problem. But in that world, we are additionally competing against alternate problems also in need of a solution. And just to give you an example of what this looks like, one of the most provocative or evocative stories and memorable stories, certainly that I've ever heard, came from a head of sales at a meeting I was doing in Palo Alto. It was a head of sales of a medical device company. This is a company that sells large medical device solutions into hospital networks that come with a 6 to 7 figure deal. These are large, expensive investments that a hospital might make. And because the solution is all about saving lives, traditionally their chief stakeholder or their target stakeholder, the senior decision maker, if you will, was essentially the chief medical officer at the hospital, the person in charge of caregiving. And this head of sales told me a story once of a deal they were doing where they had spent a great deal of time doing a very good job of differentiating themselves from the competition. That they could demonstrate to that chief medical officer why their capital equipment, their medical devices were significantly better. We're going to save more lives. We're going to help drive efficiency. And they built out this incredible business case of just how much better they were than the competition. And this deal was deep in the funnel and it was going towards the finish line. And it was going to be a 7 figure deal, one of the biggest in the history of the company. And they got to the final or close to the final buying decision. And that's when all of the different stakeholders from that broader buying group really got involved to think about, is this really how we want to spend money on behalf of our hospital? And here's where things kind of got sideways, because while they did a great job of differentiating themselves from competitors, and in fact had done a very good job of differentiating themselves from alternate solutions to the same problem, what they hadn't really accounted for was alternate problems at that hospital equally in need of a solution, which were represented by all of these different new stakeholders who are now at the table making that final decision. And just to cut to the chase in the story, they didn't close that deal. In fact, they lost that deal that day and part of that customer meeting. But what's interesting is how they lost the deal, or more importantly, who they lost the deal to. Because this capital equipment company that sells medical devices to save lives didn't lose that deal to the competition. They lost that deal to a parking garage. That's right. The hospital leadership team decided, in fact, to take that same amount of money, those 6 to 7 figures, and invest it in the creation in the building of a parking garage for the hospital, because it turns out the hospital is in desperate need of additional parking. Which you'd think, like, saving lives versus parking, come on. But if you think about it, the chief marketing officer, who was also in that meeting, that is the chief marketing officer of the hospital, made a very strong case that what really matters at a hospital, of course, more than anything else, is the patient experience. And when you have people showing up at the hospital looking for a parking spot to get their loved one into urgent care as quickly as they can, and they spend 20 to 30 minutes driving around looking for a parking spot, or maybe while their loved one is in the hospital getting the care, but they want to be by their side and can't because they can't find parking, one of the most fundamentally important things they could do to build these family ties and build the reputation of the hospital is build a parking garage. And they weren't wrong. And this isn't just a question of like which is the better solution. This is a question of alternate problems equally in need of a solution. And this is the view that that particular healthcare provider, the med tech provider hadn't really considered. And this is, I think, where we can get in trouble. So I think the lesson here is that we have to ensure not just that we're differentiating ourselves from the competition or that we're differentiating ourselves and winning the battle against alternate solutions to the same problem, but to what degree are we really accounting for alternate problems in need of a solution at our customer organization? What are those alternate problems? Who represent those problems? And are we doing a better job of connecting all those different stakeholders to each other so that in fact they agree on the number one problem that they're seeking to solve? And that problem, of course, leads to our solution. Because otherwise, what will happen is this thing will blow up and it'll blow up late in the deal and it will fall apart, not because we didn't win them over to our solution, but because we didn't win them over to the problem that our solution solves.